Thank you, everyone. Just want to say before I start my talk, so far the talks we've had and the thoughts that have been shared have been amazing, really thought-provoking. Sat there quite nervous, so bear with me, but thank you for coming. So success. If you ask anyone in society what success is, everyone can always come up with the same words, right? Money, probably the top of the tree. Recognition, status, freedom. Freedom generally linked to financial freedom. In 2021, as was just mentioned, I founded an award-winning business. It won Best Business in Wales. From the outset, I guess I look successful, right? Revenue's growing all the time, businesses operating internationally, a lot of awards coming in, and recognition from my peers. So I should be happy, right? But here's the truth, and it's a genuine truth. That was all just a charade. I wasn't a great friend. I wasn't a present son. I wasn't the partner I should have been, and I wasn't the father my children deserved. Long before I built a business, I built a mask. I think we can all relate, right? Unresolved childhood trauma doesn't always destroy us. And in fact, there's research that says it drives us. I can relate to that. Your nervous system adapts. It's quite an amazing system, actually. You become hyper aware. Something I've always had. You read the room, sometimes too much. You perform to stay safe. Again, we can all relate. Psychology tells us that trauma reshapes the brain, especially early childhood trauma. When safety feels uncertain, achievement feels like control. So I became very good at being what people needed me to be. Successful, capable, driven. But underneath that was fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being exposed. Fear of being ordinary. How many can relate to that? What looked like ambition was often protection. I wasn't chasing applause, despite receiving it. I was chasing safety. We talked about safety belts earlier when we're driving. For a time, this approach worked for me. I was successful, right? At least I thought it did. At 45, showing my age now, but at 45, I was diagnosed with ADHD and PTSD. I'm now 46, sadly. Can't change that. And I've lived an entire life not fully understanding my own brain. It's complex, trust me. ADHD isn't just about that hyper kid running around, attention seeking. In fact, it's about regulation, emotional intensity, and impulsivity. I won't even begin to tell you some of the impulsive things that I've done. That's definitely for another day. PTSD keeps your body in this survival mode. Yeah, you look I love watching wildlife programs with my son. You just look at that constantly in that survival mode, threats, detection of threats. It heightens and amplifies stress. If you're working in that stress-related industry, trying to achieve, that's forever around you. And looking back, it's easy for me to say this to you guys now and share this raw story, but actually, I didn't see it at the time, but I could see it now. Hindsight. What's that thing? It's wonderful. Pressure was my fuel. Urgency was my focus. And achievement was actually my distraction. And distractions are powerful. We all need them until they don't work. When trauma goes resolved, and this is really important, when trauma goes unresolved, it doesn't just disappear or evaporate. It shapes how you think, especially early trauma, childhood trauma, fundamental building blocks of how we see life, how we begin our life, how you feel, how you react. With undiagnosed ADHD and PTSD, your emotional regulation becomes much harder. Life's tough enough. It's also beautiful, by the way. It's not all bad. Sensitivity rises, impulsivity rises, and this is the crux for me, and the risk of self-medication also massively increases. A lot of studies now looking at that. And so I did what we all do, right, in life. I coped, unfortunately, with alcohol. At first, alcohol wasn't the problem. In fact, it was quite great getting pissed all the time. At first, it felt like a relief. we all enjoy a glass of wine. I'm sure you guys sat here's wine or beer. It's okay. I'm not saying don't drink. But when that solution that for me slowed my mind, softened the noise around me and regulated me so I knew how to rest and switch off this brain that's like a never-ending computer, good and bad. But what begins as a relief at first actually becomes reliance, and that's where my problem was. At 43, the wheels really started to fall off and the problem started to really intensify. Pressure intensified, relationships broke down, including my children. Emotionally, I was unstable and my drinking escalated, skyrocketed. And at nearly 45, as explained in the introduction, I went to prison for the first time. I lost my relationships, really important relationships in my life. I lost my business, gone. My reputation, I'd worked so hard to build, gone. My finances completely depleted, gone. My freedom, gone. And trust me, when you're in that dark cell on your own, you cannot run. If success is money and status and image, then by definition of society's terms, I become completely and utterly unsuccessful. But prison stripped something away. It stripped away that mask that we all carry, or masks. People say the chameleon effect. I can relate to that. I was a chameleon. Good in some respects, but not always good if it's not your true self. There was no status in prison. There was no applause. In fact, quite the opposite. There was no performance, being patted on the back. It was just me in that dark room to confront me. And for the first time in my adult life, I stopped running. By society's definition, this was my lowest point in life. Sitting in custody, I stopped asking how I'm going to rebuild my reputation, rebuild my wealth. And asked myself one really true question. Who am I? Who are you? Who are we? I questioned my identity. I didn't know who I was. And that's mental to say that now, but I didn't know who I was. What steps did I take to get to that point? Well, first and foremost, I confronted the root cause, the trauma, the unresolved trauma that I talked about earlier. I took accountability because that's important. A story is a story, but it still needs accountability. Stop blaming everyone else and start looking at myself a little bit closer to home. Hard, very hard. I faced my drinking. It's not okay to drink for 3 days in a row at the cost of everything and everyone around you. Anyone that tells you that, run away from them. They're not got your interests at heart. I received my diagnoses, ADHD as I mentioned, and PTSD. Won't go into what those are. I think most people in the audience have got a pretty good understanding. That understanding didn't actually remove my responsibility or my actions. It just gave me a bit of understanding. Because how can you change something if you don't understand it? How can you make those changes if you don't know what you need to change or who you're changing? That was fundamental for my recovery. Therapy helped me regulate my nervous system, and accountability rebuilt my integrity, which for me was important. That sense of purpose and self-worth that I'd always lacked, despite the shiny glitter on the outside. Big one. And for me personally, faith became an anchor. Not religion, and it wasn't a performance like I've been used to doing all my life, putting on a good performance. It was grace. That word grace. Just let that sink in a little minute, because it took me a while, grace. What comes with that is that for the first time in my life, I didn't have to earn it. I didn't have to perform for it. I didn't have to pay for it. I got the money, so I can't. I just had to accept it. Wow. Accepting unconditional love. That's hard. That's so hard. Should be easy, right? It's love. It should be really, really, really easy, but it's not. And it wasn't. It's still not. When you no longer have to prove your value or sell your value, you can admit your flaws. We're not perfect. No, not one person in here is. We've all made mistakes. And yet we live in this culture that's obsessed with success. Success above anything else. The burnout, as we've heard earlier, is rising. Anxiety and depression and the medication that comes with it is rising. Who's going to benefit from that? That's a different topic, but we all know. And research shows that once we meet our core needs, accommodation and food, and our well-being of our family, that anything above that is detrimental to our long-lasting well-being. So we're always chasing. And like I said, we're chasing that bigger car, that shiny new toy. How long does that last before we're bored? That bigger house that we don't need, that 6-bedroom, 5-bedroom house with 2 people. Crazy. It's more applause because we need that validation externally instead of internally sitting with ourselves. There's not one person that I'd imagine at some point in their life hasn't felt that. We upgrade our lifestyle at what price is a downgrade of our peace. That's what the price is. I did it. I'm standing here today and I can tell you I definitely did it. How many of you sat here listening to this have done it or are doing it? I invested years building this income, reputation, status and applause, but I didn't invest enough in me, my instability, the way I felt inside. And I'm not saying success is a problem, right? Success is great. Achievement, purpose in life is fantastic. You've just got to consider a couple of things. At what cost is that success and achievement coming to your relationships and for your own peace? Then at some point you can question, what is the success costing me to get there? Take a moment, let that sink in. So as I stand here before you, I stand here financially poor, better word, skint. Supposed to say poor, but it's skint. But emotionally rich and awoken. Today I've got less of everything. I've got less money, less status, less applause, definitely less trophies, a lot less clothes as well. Don't need money. But I've got something far greater, inner peace. And a lifelong friend recently, Michael, said to me, we had a phone call about a week ago, and he said, do you remember that time we were sat on the park bench? You were pissed, as usual. And he said, you turned around to me and said, where would you rather be sat, on this park bench or on a yacht? And at the time, I know what I said the yacht, but I really didn't feel that was the truth, even back then. It turns out the question wasn't about where we're sitting or where we sit. The question, and the answer to that question is, can we sit in either, still feel peace, still feel contentment and fulfilled? Pete Portal writes a book about how to be unsuccessful, slightly ironic. How apparent failure can actually shape our soul. And sometimes the most successful thing you can do is to look unsuccessful. Don't try and look cool, be cool. Same sort of motto. And prison really did strip away that image that I built, this facade. Foundations built on sand. And I did find myself. And as I stand here today, Marcos asked me to do the talk and I considered it. And I was going to actually pull out based on my ego, based on this ego of sharing this story. Thinking I need to go back out there and be the big businessman with lots of money, but no real heart and no friends around me. So I've lost that family, the business, the money, reputation, applause and freedom. And thought for a while, I actually thought I'd lost my future. That's a sad space to be in. But actually the future's bright. I'm not going to say the other bit. The future is bright because I can see a change. I can see and know me. And I know, as the scripture says that I really like, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and yet forfeit his soul? At what price do we pay? I'd forfeited mine nearly. And today as I sit here, or stand here, sorry, I can sit quietly with myself. I can be on my own and feel okay. I can look my children in the eye and know that I failed them in some respects, but also that they were shown love. I did my best at the time. I no longer need that mask. It's gone. It's thrown out. No longer. So I'm just going to ask you a couple of things now. With everything you've heard here today and what I've shared with you, do you still define success in the same way? And if you stripped away everything, all the external things that we have in life that we chase, are you still fulfilled and content? I don't know. Maybe you are. Do you still consider yourself to be successful? I think maybe success isn't what we accumulate. Maybe it's who we become. And maybe Success isn't the goal. Maybe peace is. Thank you very much.